Already, the press, the left have come at you and come at you hard. Specifically, I'll give you two big issues. One on the issue, you once worked for the Alliance Defense Fund, a Christian advocacy group, and comments you had made both in writing and advocacy for this group about homosexuality, calling it sinful, destructive, and not supporting gay marriage. Quote, no clear right to sodomy in the Constitution. You have been getting hammered on this. And I want to ask you about it. I want to know exactly, where you stand. Some of these comments were 15 years ago.
I don't even remember some of them. I was a litigator that was called upon to defend the state marriage amendments. If you remember back in the early 2000s, I think it was over 35 states, somewhere in that number, that the people went to the ballot in their respective states and they amended their state constitutions to say marriage is one man, one woman. Well, I was a religious liberty defense lawyer and I was called to go in and defend those cases in the courts. Let me state this very clearly, and there's been questions about this. Let me say where I am. Anybody that knows me will tell you this is true. I am a rule of law guy. I made a career defending the rule of law. I respect the rule of law. When the Supreme Court issued the Obergefell opinion, that became the law of the land, okay? I respect the rule of law, but I also genuinely love all people, regardless of their lifestyle choices. This is not about the people themselves. I am a Bible-believing Christian. Someone asked me today in the media, they said, it's curious, people are curious, what does Mike Johnson think about any issue under the sun? I said, well, go pick up a Bible off your shelf and read it. That's my worldview. That's what I believe. And so
that's your personal worldview.
My personal worldview. But here's the thing. Everybody comes to the House of Representatives with deep personal convictions. But all of our personal convictions are not going to become law. This is a big body of people. There's 435 members in the House. You have to argue and find consensus and all of that. So I have no agenda other than what's best for the American people and to defend the rule of law, and that's what we're doing.
Well, then, let me ask you on the issue of abortion, where you've been very pro-life. Obviously, that comes from your issue as faith. You had argued against Roe, bad law. Dobbs happened. That issue now has been sent back to the states. On either one of these issues, gay marriage, abortion, in the next 14 months, as you're going to be the Speaker of the House, assuming the motion to vacate never comes up, which I think is awful, shouldn't be there.
I think we're going to change.
Or have a higher bar, certainly, 25 people instead of just any one member. But on those two issues where they've come at you so hard, and you're explaining your personal view and you're kind of bifurcating it or away from your political view, do you see any scenario where either one of those issues would be an agenda item for you and the Republicans for the next 14 months or at any point down the line?
Well, first of all, on the marriage issue, no one has discussed that for as long as I can remember. This has been settled by the Supreme Court in the Obergefell opinion in 2015. So that's the decision. Now, they changed the definition of marriage that had been regarded by basically every human society for 5,000 years, but when 5 justices on the Supreme Court changed it, that became the law of the land. I'm a constitutional law attorney. I respect that, and we move forward. The abortion issue is different. The table was just reset with Dobbs' opinion overturned Roe, which I thought was one of the worst, probably the worst, Supreme Court opinion.
Roe v. Wade.
Roe v. Wade, yes, the most erroneous court opinion that had been
So you like it back? You like the states to decide?
We argued my entire career for 25 years that the states should have the right to do this. There's no national consensus among the people on what to do with that issue on a federal level, for certain. We have such big priorities in this moment right now, Sean. We have Israel being attacked. We have unrest. We have the Ukraine situation we've got to deal with. We have China being aggressive. We have Iran with all the meddling, and China, Russia, and Iran working together. This is a dangerous time. The economy is in the tank. The border's overrun. People are dying from fentanyl poisoning. All of these issues. These are the frontline matters that have our attention right now, and the rest of these things they're just using for political attacks.
So basically you're saying these issues will not be coming up, and you're going to focus on the agenda items that you have laid out already and the ones you just mentioned, which we will go into some detail with. Let me ask you one other question on this, and this has come up as, well, controversial. You had authored legislation called the Stop the Sexualization of Children Act of 2022. Okay, now, I looked deeply into this act. Your critics have said, or dubbed it, it's a federal don't say gay measure. By the way, the word gay was never in the Florida legislation, in fairness to Governor DeSantis. And yet, this, when you look at exactly what this is, it would prohibit the use of federal funds to develop, implement, facilitate, or fund any sexually oriented program, event, literature for children under the age of 10. Now, a lot of our kids in a lot of school districts around the country, they can't read, write, do math, science. They're not learning history, and they certainly need to learn computers. So, to the age of 10, very specifically. But you're not talking about anything beyond that.
No, and if you poll this anywhere in the country, almost any state, any community, they're going to say moms and dads should be the ones responsible for talking about these sensitive issues with their children, not the public school system. I mean, I'll take that debate anywhere, to Main Street, in any town hall, in any city in America. I would love for them to challenge us on that, because that's what the American people believe, and that's what I believe.
Let me ask, I have a lot of questions. As you point out, there is a lot going on in the world right now. Let me throw some numbers at you, because I think they're very important. We've got war in Europe, we've got Ukraine, and we got Russia. And it seems very precarious there. Already Joe Biden has given $76.8 billion to Ukraine. He wants $61 billion more. He wants $14 billion to go to Israel. And I think and then he wants to put money on the border, probably to satisfy conservatives in the House and get their support on Ukraine, for example, which seems to be his top priority. A big disparity in the amount of money. I have some criticisms about the issue of Ukraine. Number one, if you're going to fight a war, you should fight it to win it. I thought the president made a horrible mistake by denying MiGs that were offered by Poland. I think the president made a horrible mistake trying to put handcuffs on the Ukrainian army, led by Zelensky, on the issue of how they will fight and what weapons they can and cannot use, like cluster bombs. I don't like the fact that Europe doesn't pay their fair share. So they've got $78 billion. He wants another $61 billion. How will you deal with the issues that he wants to tie all of these issues together, which now gets into the budgetary process? Will you go issue by issue?
I told the staff at the White House today that our consensus among House Republicans is that we need to bifurcate those issues. I agree with your assessment in Ukraine, and that's why the American people are demanding some real accountability for the use of those dollars. Now, we can't allow Vladimir Putin to prevail in Ukraine, because I don't believe it would stop there, and it would probably encourage and empower China to perhaps make a move on Taiwan. We have these concerns. We're not going to abandon them, but we have a responsibility, a stewardship responsibility over the precious treasure of the American people. And we have to make sure that the White House is providing the people with some accountability for the dollars. And we want to know what the objective there is. What is the end game in Ukraine? The White House has not provided that. I was at the White House for a couple of hours today, and I told the staff there that this is where we are. This is where the House Republicans are. So we're going to look at Israel separately.
With that kind of money, is it America having a proxy war with Putin and Russia?
It's a great concern. We've got a group of our colleagues here in the House, led by Mike Garcia out of California, a brilliant legislator and a Top Gun pilot. And some of our veterans have gotten together. Dan Crenshaw is involved in this, and others. They came up with a document that presents 12 critical questions for the White House to answer as a condition of our supplying the additional support. These are not hard questions, Sean. These are things the White House should be forthcoming about. I delivered that myself.
Oh, you did deliver it to the president?
I delivered it myself today, and to the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan.
Did he read it?
He says he's studied.
He's going to study it tonight during the show.
Yes. So we want to be cooperative. We need to work together on this, but we owe it to the people to know what the plan is, where the money is going to be spent, and we need some auditing for the dollars that we've already sent over there. These are not tough questions, right? Mm-hmm. Israel is a separate matter. We're going to bring forward a standalone Israel funding measure over $14 billion.
Is $14 billion enough?
Well, Israel's requested a little less than that, actually. The White House did, by way of Israel, and $14.5 billion specifically is what we're looking at. It's a very specific number tied to very specific measures. But here's the important thing that distinguishes House Republicans from the other team. We're going to find pay-fors in the budget. We're not just printing money to send it overseas. We're going to find the cuts elsewhere to do that.